Good day, everybody. I'm Shmi, and I make guides for Path of Exile's Ruthless mode. If you're enjoying the content, please hit that like button, and feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more. Today, I'm back to teach you how to create a poisonous Rain of Arrows assassin. It uses a combination of Rain of Arrows, Shrapnel Totem, and Barrage, and explicitly takes advantage of the inherent shotgunning of Rain of Arrows and Shrapnel Totem. The build uses Perfect Agony and is based around poison, and with the Assassin's Ascendancy Noxious Strike, your poisons will virtually always have double duration. In terms of defense, it's not great, but it's good for a bow class. You get iron reflexes and a decent amount of increased life, but you're going to be kiting most monsters instead of face tanking them. Many of you have heard of Toxic Rain, and you may be wondering why this build uses Rain of Arrows instead. Well, funny thing is that Rain of Arrows is actually better DPS than Toxic Rain, as long as the monster's hitbox is large enough. Each activation of Rain of Arrows sends out around 20 different little area of effect hits. Half of these arrows are loosely targeted at monsters in the area of effect, and the other half just fall randomly in the area. If there aren't targets, or if there's only one, like in most boss fights, they'll all fall randomly, and depending on how big that one enemy's hitbox is, however many land in the hitbox, all hit. This Katava fight shows the maximum effect against a boss with a gigantic hitbox, and it is immensely powerful. Alongside Rain of Arrows, you're going to use Shrapnel Totem and Barrage. Shrapnel Totem has the capability of shotgunning, which means that against a monster with a big hitbox, they can hit 3 times. However, all we really use Shrapnel Totem for is to distract large groups of monsters and as fragile glass cannons against bosses. It's not something that we heavily invest into. Barrage can be okay depending on what additional support gems you feed it, but to be frank, Barrage is only there for enemies that have incredibly small hitboxes that just escape Rain of Arrows. Rain of Arrows will be roughly equal or better DPS in the vast majority of situations, even if you kit out your Barrage. The build also gets to cheat a technicality about the poison mechanic. You see, poison can be inflicted by either physical or chaos damage, but the poison itself always deals chaos damage. This means that poisons inflicted entirely with physical damage gain both the benefit of increased physical and increased chaos damage. If we were to use Toxic Rain instead, the inherent physical to chaos conversion in the skill gem would cut off 60% of our physical damage scaling. Since we're using skills that deal physical damage only, we get to double dip our scaling with both increased physical and increased chaos damage. This is particularly nice with some points that we take at the passive tree in the very beginning. The build also gets to cheat with its support gems. Toxic Rain builds require added projectiles to scale their damage. This means that spending points in the passive tree and finding at least one of the multiple projectile supports is necessary to play the build. Rain of Arrows, on the other hand, ingrains a huge amount of added projectiles in the skill gem, which means that this build scales very poorly from the same ways that Toxic Rain does. That in turn means that all the points spent in the passive tree we get to spend elsewhere, but more importantly, it frees up at least one support gem slot for our primary damage skill. And in true shadowy, roguey fashion, we also get to use the Ascendancy Ambush and Assassinate to cheat our critical strike chance. The ambush half is nice, but the assassinate part is what's really great. Remember that low life just means below 50% health. This Ascendancy will double our critical strike chance against every single boss under half health. As long as we can get enemies down to 50%, and it's not that hard, then they will wither and melt underneath a slurry of crits. There is some very bad news about this build, and it makes it an absolute pain to level. Shadows do not get bow skills as quest rewards, and I mean like any bow skills. If you want to play as a PROA assassin, your first step is to create a farm ranger, and you have to take her all the way to the Cavern of Wrath. You don't have to kill Merveil and clear all of Act 1, but I will openly admit the required pre-farm for this build is just ridiculous. On that ranger, the quest rewards that you're going to want to take go as follows. After killing Hillock, take Split Arrow. After you finish breaking some eggs, take Shrapnel Totem. After you kill Brutus, you can take Mirror Arrow, but it's optional. You'll still get precision on your shadow, but it will mean that you won't be able to farm a clarity on that shadow. After you get to the Cavern of Wrath, head back to town, take Rain of Arrows, and then move your inventory into your stash, then create your Poisonous Rain of Arrows shadow. As with any weapon-based class, your damage will be entirely dependent on your ability to find a decent bow and quiver. However, this class gains a giant advantage because of how we level our passive tree. To begin leveling your passive tree, take this track, which gives us both increased chaos damage and increased physical damage. While you're leveling, all of the increased physical damage bumps your damage scaling up into the sky, and it significantly reduces your dependence on a good weapon. And at late game, once the build is set up, you get to double dip all of these stats into your poison damage. You'll want to take Blood Siphon for life recovery and some strength, but otherwise keep going through the physical damage nodes to Fangs of the Viper, all the way through Blood Drinker. While you're here, make sure to take Clever Thief, because while the life leech is nice, that little bit of mana leech that you get here means that you will never, ever have to worry about mana ever again. Another big problem when you level this build is that you have to make a choice while you're leveling up until around level 50. Your defense doesn't really matter until you get Iron Reflexes, and that is all the way down over here by the duelist area of the tree. Your offense doesn't really matter until you can fill out all of the chance to poison nodes. You can pick the poison clusters first while you're leveling up, but if you do that, Acts 4 and 5 are likely going to be a rippy nightmare. If you do what I did and speedrun to Iron Reflexes, you're going to be hilariously tanky through Acts 4 and 5, but your damage is going to be pretty awful. I personally would recommend speedrunning Iron Reflexes first because I know it works, but if you're brave, you are welcome to take the poison clusters along the way to get your damage set up. What I did was I headed all the way down to Herbalism and then in for the increased movement speed around Quick Step. Then I went down this inner path all the way over to the Duelist area, down through Golem's Blood to take Iron Reflexes. Once you have Iron Reflexes, you're going to want to develop all of the chance to poison nodes that the build gets right away. When you take Swift Venoms, make sure that you take the chance to poison side of this cluster. The same thing with Fatal Toxins, as well as when you come in to get this bow cluster for Hunter's Gambit. Make sure you stay on this side, the one that's giving you chance to poison. Once you've taken all of those chance to poison nodes, you can fill the rest of the build at your leisure. Going in for Art of the Gladiator here gives you a nice 7% increased movement speed. Taking Ballistics is great because that increased projectile speed slightly lowers the time it takes for the rain of arrows to actually land and deal damage. If you've already gotten Ballistics, which means you've gotten Heart of Oak, then taking Perfectionist gives you a total of 96% chance to avoid stuns. The only thing that really matters in terms of order is that Perfect Agony should be taken absolutely last. And when I say last, I mean last, around level 72 or level 73. Now, there's a note here that I'm going to go ahead and make, and everyone at this point has probably been screaming it at me. This build is based around dealing critical strikes, and we have passed 3 of the best crit clusters in the tree, and we're not taking perfect agony potentially until after you finish the campaign. Why? Well, it would be amazing to get those first if we had the points, but the reality is without iron reflexes and the defense and life that we pick up from the duelist part of the tree, the build just can't survive. The good news, though, is that it doesn't really matter. You set your defense up through the campaign, but taking those crit clusters early would benefit you very little. You need to already have all those poison clusters for the crit and perfect agony to really matter. Those crit clusters that you've gone straight past all become immensely powerful for you as soon as you finish the rest of the build, and they give you a huge, huge gift. It's one of the biggest strengths of this build and makes it a phenomenal league starter. It will safely take you through the campaign to level 73 once you've completed this build. But as you go into the endgame, you can immediately indulge in all of those crit nodes that you passed on early. Get Assassination, first up by the Shadow area, and then get Heartseeker over by the Ranger area. They are point for point the best value. Then you're going to want to take King of the Hill. With all of the crit and crit multiplier that you gain, your damage will consistently explode in scaling the further you develop into the endgame. You're also going to want to come here to take these bow nodes, Deadly Draw, as well as Farsight. All of these extremely high value damage nodes that you're getting will take your development all the way to level 86, well into the end game, without the need for a single cluster or abyss jewel, and without the need to spend so much as one more pathing point. Your defense is completely set up by level 73, and every new level pushes your damage harder and harder, making it a fabulous endgame pushing character. For your Ascendancies, take Ambush and Assassinate first. Second, take Noxious Strike, and then take Toxic Delivery third. If and when you finish your Eternal Labyrinth, you have another choice. Unstable Infusion is one of the best, easiest, and most consistent generators of power charges in the tree. As soon as you take it, you will just always have all of your power charges, so this will effectively just give you 150% increased critical strike chance. However, there are other ways to get power charges. If you don't have a way to generate power charges, you're going to want to take Unstable Infusion. Otherwise, if you can generate your own power charges, Opportunistic is the better choice. With this build, you can shower the map with a never-ending torrent of poisonous arrows. You can drain down even the biggest bosses and do it at lightning speed. If you're looking to play Ruthless and you're interested in playing a bow class, I highly recommend this Poisonous Rain of Arrows Assassin. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care, Exiles.